I said, look, I promise you one thing, this is it. We'll do this right, set up a good foundation for the business to be profitable and healthy, and we're going to hit our numbers, and we were able to keep that promise.
Harley Davidson just made a move no one saw coming, and it's shaking the entire bike world to its core. The CEO's out, the headquarters is heading overseas, and thousands of workers are out of a job. Is this bold strategy Harley's big comeback, or the beginning of the end? Jochen Zeitz isn't just walking away from Harley Davidson. He's leaving behind a legacy that's hard to ignore, and a storm brewing inside the walls of one of America's most legendary companies. His exit, announced just today, is far from routine. It's the final chapter in a series of bold, controversial moves that may change the face of the motorcycle industry as we know it. For years, Zeitz has been Harley's steady hand through one of its toughest stretches. He stepped in when the company was bleeding financially, aging out of its customer base, and struggling to find relevance in a world moving quickly toward electric vehicles and environmentally conscious manufacturing. He brought in new strategies, restructured operations, cut down excess, and tried to shift Harley into the future. Some of his choices were praised, others criticized, but no one ever accused him of playing it safe.
Company for where you're going.
You know, building our bikes in America is a very important factor, and we are an American icon, we're an American brand, and we want to keep it that way.
Now, as he prepares to leave, Zeitz's last major decision is turning more heads than perhaps anything he's done before. Harley Davidson is relocating its global headquarters, leaving the United States. This isn't a small adjustment, it's a major uprooting of a brand that has long stood as a symbol of American grit and pride. For over a century, Harley has been based in the US, proudly branding itself as part of the American dream. Moving the headquarters overseas cuts deep, not just for loyal riders, but for anyone who's ever seen Harley as more than just a motorcycle. So why now? According to insiders and early reports, the decision is being driven by rising tariffs, global supply chain problems, and the renewed pressure from a shifting trade landscape following Donald Trump's return to the presidency. With trade tensions heating up again and foreign markets becoming more complicated to navigate from a US-based HQ, the company is trying to protect its bottom line. And for Zeitz, making this call might have been his final act, one that secures the company's financial future but risks damaging its soul.
If you look over decades, average age of rider introduced to the sport and average age of riders has been rising. The company's initial response to that was to expand to younger riders and bring forward lower priced bikes, and consequently margins collapsed. Where did it all go wrong?
Well, we tried to do too many things that eventually...
The timing couldn't be more critical. Harley has already been facing declining US sales, increased competition from both Asian and European bike makers, and a generational gap where younger riders simply don't see the same appeal in big loud cruisers that their parents did. By moving the headquarters, the company is clearly signaling a shift in identity. It's no longer just about catering to American riders. It's about surviving in a global market, even if it means turning its back on its roots. And then there's the people. Alongside the relocation news came confirmation of mass layoffs, particularly in departments tied to US operations. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are longtime employees, engineers, designers, and factory workers. Some have spent decades with Harley. To them, Zeitz's retirement doesn't just mark the end of a CEO's reign. It marks the end of the Harley they once knew. Jochen Zeitz might be retiring, but his departure is more like pulling the pin from a grenade. He's leaving behind a company at a major crossroads, one facing tough questions. Can Harley survive this identity shift? Will its global strategy pay off? And how will longtime fans react to a Harley Davidson that no longer calls America home? These are the questions that will define Harley's future. And they all begin with the decision Jochen Zeitz made just before stepping down. When Jochen Zeitz stepped up to the podium and announced that Harley Davidson would be moving its headquarters out of the United States, the room fell silent. This wasn't just a business update. It felt like the end of an era. For generations, Harley Davidson has been more than just a motorcycle company. It has represented something deeply American: open roads, blue-collar pride, the spirit of rebellion, and a lifestyle that millions identified with. So hearing that the company would be shifting its home base overseas didn't just raise eyebrows. It struck a nerve.
We want to do that with motorcycles, but also by expanding into a business that is way under leverage, and that's the apparel business. And the world is big. There's America, there's the Asian markets, there's the European markets, and if we focus on those markets.
Zeitz explained that the move was driven by mounting economic pressure. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House, tariffs and trade wars have surged back into play. The US has seen steep increases in manufacturing costs, especially for companies with global supply chains like Harley Davidson. Steel and aluminum prices are once again being affected by import taxes, and retaliatory tariffs from other countries have made it more expensive to export American-made bikes. The company, known for its strong international customer base, found itself in a tough spot. Selling abroad had become increasingly unprofitable.
Well, we've always been here. All our bikes that we sell in America are made in America. It's not the robots that are doing all the work. It's the folks that have been with the company for 10, 20, 30 years, some third generation in our factories. I mean, that is an incredible asset and that we can be incredibly proud of.
What's the message that you have for your nearly 6,000 employees at the company?
But even with that context, the decision to relocate headquarters felt extreme. After all, Harley was born in a Milwaukee garage in 1903. Its roots are deeply American. Over the years, it has become almost inseparable from the country's identity. Presidents have ridden Harleys. Veterans have leaned on them as a symbol of freedom. Rock songs, movies, tattoos, and biker clubs have all celebrated Harley Davidson as a piece of American culture. That's why this announcement hit so hard. Zeitz didn't just say Harley was moving some production overseas. That had already happened years ago, and though controversial, it was somewhat understood. This was different. This was Harley Davidson formally moving its headquarters and corporate leadership to a foreign country, something that many die-hard fans and workers thought would never happen. According to company insiders, the final decision was made after months of internal debate. Europe and parts of Asia, particularly India and Thailand, were being considered as new homes due to their lower labor costs, business-friendly tax laws, and closer proximity to growing motorcycle markets. The company hasn't officially confirmed the new location yet, but reports suggest that several senior executives have already relocated abroad. Reactions to the announcement were swift and sharp. American workers, especially those at the Milwaukee headquarters, were blindsided. Some found out through the news rather than internal communication. Unions condemned the decision, calling it a betrayal of the brand's heritage and its loyal U.S. workforce. Politicians, particularly those in manufacturing-heavy states, expressed outrage, accusing Harley of abandoning its home for profit. From a business standpoint, some analysts say the move could be necessary for long-term survival. Harley's sales have declined in the U.S. over the past decade, while international markets have grown steadily. Setting up operations closer to those markets may help reduce costs and improve delivery times. But no matter how sound the financial logic may be, the emotional blow is real. This wasn't just a CEO signing off on a spreadsheet. It was a statement that the old Harley Davidson, the American icon, might be giving way to something entirely new. Whether this evolution helps the brand thrive or marks the beginning of its decline is still an open question. One thing is certain: Harley's world just changed, and it won't be going back. Behind Harley Davidson's dramatic decision to move its headquarters abroad is a bigger story, one driven by politics, global economics, and the rising cost of doing business in the U.S. The trigger? A fresh wave of tariffs and trade tensions under President Donald Trump's second term, which has reignited protectionist policies and reshaped the landscape for American manufacturers.
We want to make it easier for businesses to create more jobs and more factories in the United States, and you're a great example of it.
You're a great example of it. That was just last year at the White House. The president holding up a quintessential American brand, motorcycle maker Harley Davidson, as just the type of company he wants to have.
Trump's renewed push to bring manufacturing back to U.S. soil came with heavy consequences for companies that rely on global supply chains. Harley Davidson, despite its image as a red-blooded American brand, depends on international parts, partnerships, and markets. New tariffs on imported steel, aluminum, and key motorcycle components drove production costs up sharply. At the same time, other countries responded with retaliatory tariffs on U.S.-made goods, making Harley's bikes more expensive in crucial overseas markets like the EU and Asia. The company was stuck. Producing motorcycles domestically meant shrinking margins and higher prices for customers. But cutting costs without shifting operations would only push Harley deeper into financial trouble. Zeitz, never one to flinch from hard calls, made a choice that many CEOs might have hesitated to make. He chose survival over sentiment. Harley Davidson had been trying to strike a balance for years. They opened some overseas production facilities to serve local markets more efficiently, but the recent trade climate made piecemeal changes no longer enough. Moving the headquarters entirely was a message. The company wasn't going to wait for political tides to turn. It was going to do what was necessary to protect its future. The decision wasn't just about escaping tariffs. It was also about staying competitive with other major players in the motorcycle industry, many of whom are headquartered in countries with friendlier trade environments and lower production costs. Companies like Honda, Yamaha, and BMW weren't facing the same barriers. If Harley wanted to keep pace, it had to level the playing field. In the end, it was a brutal calculation. Keep the heart of the company in the US and risk bleeding cash, or shift gears entirely to preserve what's left of its global standing. Zeitz chose the latter. And with that one move, he may have safeguarded Harley's financial future, even if it meant breaking with its American past.
When I started, morale was very low. There was no sort of culture of winning. And then there was COVID and all the fear that came along with that we would have to cut not just costs, but staff as well. We had to set up a new foundation based on which we could then rebuild the business. This is my 4th year, and we've hit all our numbers despite all the uncertainties we had.
The announcement that Harley Davidson would relocate its headquarters overseas was only part of the story. The real shock came when the company revealed the next step in its restructuring plan: mass layoffs across the United States. For a brand that has long been a source of pride in communities across the Midwest and beyond, the news hit hard. Entire departments are being wiped out. From factory workers in Wisconsin to office employees in Milwaukee, thousands are now facing unemployment. The impact isn't limited to the production line. Corporate divisions, marketing, design, engineering, even finance have all been slashed as part of the company's plan to streamline operations and cut costs. For many, this isn't just a job loss. It's the end of a lifelong connection to a brand they believed in. Generations of workers have passed through Harley Davidson's plants. Some employees come from families where working for Harley was tradition. Now, those legacies are being cut short with a cold memo or a short meeting in an HR office. The company has framed the move as a necessary step to stay competitive in a rapidly changing market. Global sales have been inconsistent for years. Younger consumers are shifting toward electric vehicles or alternative mobility solutions, and Harley has struggled to maintain relevance outside of its core aging demographic. With mounting pressures from tariffs and production costs, leadership decided the only way forward was to downsize and restructure. But for the people being let go, the reasoning doesn't soften the blow.
Well, we've always been here. All our bikes that we sell in America are made in America. It's not the robots that are doing all the work. It's the folks that have been with the company for 10, 20, 30 years, some 3rd generation in our factories. I mean, that is an incredible asset and that we can be incredibly proud of.
What's the message that you have for your nearly 6,000 employees at the company?
There's also concern about what these layoffs mean for the future of American manufacturing. Harley Davidson was more than just an employer. It was a symbol of industrial strength in a part of the country that's already watched many of its factories close. Now, another cornerstone of local economies is being pulled out, leaving workers and their communities to pick up the pieces.
Jobs and their future right now.
Work is going on as normal inside the Harley Davidson powertrain plant in Menominee Falls. We met some workers, though, who say they're feeling...
Critics argue that the company is turning its back on the very people who built it. And while Harley says it's offering severance packages and transition assistance, the broader effect is still devastating. Families are left without income. Entire towns are bracing for economic ripple effects. Local suppliers and contractors who depended on Harley's business are also at risk. As the company moves toward a leaner, more globally focused structure, one thing is clear: the cost of that transformation is being paid by the workers who helped shape the brand into what it is today.
You ask yourself, why is an American iconic company moving their American motorcycles to be made in Asia? It doesn't make any sense.
Harley Davidson's decision to move its headquarters overseas isn't just shaking up its own operations. It's sending shockwaves through the entire motorcycle industry. When the most recognized name in American motorcycling says it can no longer afford to stay rooted in the US, it forces everyone else to ask a serious question. If Harley can't make it work here, who can? This move doesn't just challenge business strategy. It challenges identity. Harley has always stood for something bigger than bikes. It represented independence, grit, and Americana. So when even Harley decides the only way forward is by cutting ties with its US roots, smaller companies and industry players start to worry about their own future. And rightfully so. Suppliers across the country are now looking at their order sheets with growing concern. Harley's manufacturing plants weren't just building bikes, they were driving a network of small and mid-sized parts suppliers, from metal fabricators to custom engine builders. With operations shifting abroad and production being scaled down domestically, many of these businesses are losing one of their largest and often most stable customers. Then there are the dealerships. Independent Harley Davidson dealerships, many of which are family-owned and have operated for decades, are uncertain about what this change means for them. While Harley has said that U.S. sales will continue, fewer domestic operations could mean less inventory, slower support, and higher costs, all of which hurt local dealers who rely on consistent product availability and strong brand loyalty to survive.
And when it crossed my desk, I thought, wow, that's an interesting story to talk about, right? Moving stuff to Thailand. But Harley Davidson motorcycles, guys, the electronic...
Custom and aftermarket parts businesses are also bracing for change. The US-based customization culture around Harley is massive, with entire businesses built on enhancing or modifying these bikes. But if more of Harley's production shifts overseas, including design and engineering, that direct pipeline between American builders and the brand could weaken. This may also impact product compatibility, shipping timelines, and pricing. On top of it all, there's the psychological impact. Harley Davidson has long served as a sort of North Star for the American motorcycle industry. Its decisions often shape the tone and direction of the sector. Now that it's chosen to restructure globally and reduce its U.S. footprint, it sets a clear example for others. Startups and established manufacturers alike are watching and wondering whether they too will need to consider offshoring just to keep up. In short, Harley's move is more than just a company repositioning itself. It's a loud signal to the rest of the industry. The rules have changed. Whether this triggers a wave of similar decisions or sparks a pushback remains to be seen, but one thing is clear. Nothing in the American motorcycle world feels stable anymore. Harley Davidson is standing at a crossroads, and no one is entirely sure where the road leads. With Jochen Zeitz stepping down, the company is preparing for a major shift, not just in leadership, but in purpose, direction, and identity. A brand that once defined American freedom now faces an uncertain future from foreign soil. It's a moment that feels both historic and unsettling. Zeitz wasn't a traditional Harley leader. He came in during a time of crisis, made unpopular decisions, and tried to modernize a company that was deeply rooted in nostalgia. He pushed for electric bikes, restructured global operations, and now, at the end of his tenure, he's leaving the company in the middle of a massive transition. The next CEO will inherit a company that's no longer just trying to sell motorcycles. It's trying to redefine itself. One of the biggest questions is whether Harley Davidson can maintain its soul after such a dramatic shift. Moving headquarters abroad isn't just a logistical change, it's symbolic. The company that was once proudly born and bred in the American heartland will now be calling another country home. For a brand built on patriotism and cultural legacy, that's a big pill to swallow. Loyal customers, especially in the US, are already reacting. Many longtime riders feel blindsided. To them, Harley was never just a company. It was part of their identity. They wore the jackets, tattooed the logo, joined the clubs, and rode thousands of miles with that bar and shield on their backs. Now, some are questioning their loyalty. If Harley no longer sees value in staying on American soil, what does that say to the people who stood by it for decades? Then there's the global market. Harley has spent years trying to expand its reach beyond the US, but results have been mixed. While there's interest abroad, especially in parts of Asia and Europe, the brand has never had the same emotional pull internationally as it does in America. Now that it's physically moving out of the US, Harley's challenge is to rebuild trust at home while trying to win the hearts of new riders overseas. That's no easy task. The leadership vacuum also raises concerns about consistency. Will the new CEO continue the cost-cutting, globally focused playbook? Or will they try to restore Harley's image as a proudly American icon and bring some operations back? Investors want results. Customers want reassurance. Employees, especially those affected by layoffs, want answers. So is this the start of Harley Davidson's next chapter? One that makes it more competitive and modern in a global market? Or is this the beginning of the end of what Harley has always stood for? Right now, no one knows for sure. What's clear is that the choices made in the coming month will shape the future of one of the most legendary brands in the world. And whether it thrives or fades will depend on whether it can walk the fine line between global relevance and staying true to its roots. Has Harley just traded freedom for survival? Drop your thoughts below. Loyalty or betrayal?